I'm Marcia Maycumber here with Jason Giesland, my co-host today. Good morning, Jason.
That's me. Good morning. Great to be here.
And we also have a very exciting next guest with us, whom I have been trying to connect with and get on the show for sometimes. Dr. Quinton Martins is with us. He is the principal investigator for the Audubon Canyon Ranch's Living with Lions program, and he's also the managing partner of True Wild, which, if you're wondering, their offices are right across from the Sonoma Valley Regional Park in Glen Ellen. Sure is a great place. And somebody who has started a wonderful program back in 2016, I think, to begin collaring and tracking the local mountain lion population in Sonoma County and beyond, I think, a little bit too. And you're now up to 27 or more collared and tracked mountain lions. It's kind of amazing to think we have that many here. But in any event, let's get right to it. Dr. Martins, thank you for being on the show and welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be on your show. We really appreciate it.
I love hearing about what's been happening with lions, hopefully the good things. We've heard from time to time of somebody spotting one in a backyard in Petaluma or some other place. And thankfully, most people are smart and keep their distance, call the appropriate authorities. I guess one thing we should ask you is, how do you interface with state Fish and Game? Because I know they are the ones who are actually charged in a backyard mountain lion situation with safely removing the animal from the wrong location that it really shouldn't be in. Where do you fit into the scene?
Well, our strongest sort of relationship with CDFW is through the scientific partnership. So a lot of the research work that we do, we work in collaboration with them and publish scientific papers with the folks based particularly in the Sacramento area. With the regional guys, I mean, typically, as you mentioned, you know, they take ownership or take charge of these, local situations if they're contacted. On the other hand, if we get calls from the public, you know, we're mandated to work with the landowners and then work in collaboration with Fish and Wildlife to deal with those situations. But relocation, you know, by the way, is not really it's not promoted with mountain lions because it doesn't really solve the issue. There are certainly cases where we think that it is feasible, and the state are looking into that side of things at the moment to see whether there are opportunities to do it more often. You know, particularly with younger animals which are not resident, it doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. But again, you know, if there is some kind of conflict-related issue, you're not really solving the underlying issue by removing a mountain lion because it's there, because it's already in mountain lion habitats. So if you take that guy out, someone else is going to come in and you're going to end up with the same issues. And with regards to, you know, overlapping with people, you know, I just did a hike with my family yesterday at Bartholomew Park. And, you know, I was just saying to my wife, geez, you know, it really, I can't believe how much people have taken over the space in Sonoma and these areas. You know, one mountain lion has can have over 10,000 private land parcels in its territory. You know, so it's constantly on private land. It's constantly near people, and you know, the fact that they don't get seen more often is quite amazing, really.
Absolutely true.
They are not aggressors with people, right? They're not going to try and. They're not going to choose to come after a person. They will defend themselves, correct?
No, they're, you know, from, you know, statistically, you know, we simply don't have enough scientific evidence to be able to work with. You know, these incidents happen so seldom, and obviously it's a terrible thing when they do happen. There was a recent case in Los Angeles area where a child was attacked. But, these cases are really few and far between. In California, 4 people have died as a result of mountain lion attacks since 1890.
That's a pretty small number.
So it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. It really happens very seldom. So they're rather a timid, by nature, a timid animal, and historically and evolutionary speaking wise, mountain lions almost fall into what we would term or regard as being a mesopredator. An intermediate predator. They used to have these really big guys around, the American lion, 800 pounds, and the saber-toothed cats and that. And mountain lions were these little cats hanging about, only 10,000 years ago were these really big, aggressive guys.
And that's changed quite a lot.
Indeed.
Well, we don't have, the saber-toothed tiger and all that anymore.
I guess we're probably grateful that that's the case,
yes.
Especially in Santa Rosa or Sonoma.
We don't want that. I know that a great deal of your program, Living with Lions, is educating the public, and given that we are living in such a large agricultural environment and livestock environment here, to kind of reduce in whatever way can be done any altercations between mountain lions and livestock. So obviously keeping livestock protected as best as possible is number one, since the mountain lions will go wherever they want to. If we, in the off chance we have some listeners who have ranches, what kind of tips do you want to give listeners in terms of protecting livestock and pets? I know you've also talked about pets in the past, that keeping them inside at night and so forth. What are the things that we should know about doing our best to protect animals from mountain lions?
Well, excuse the pun, but there's no silver bullet to to this age-long sort of issue of conflict with where there are people and nature, But what we work very much trying to find ways that people can coexist with these animals, and interestingly enough, throughout the state, and especially in our area, over 90% of the conflict cases are not with commercial livestock farmers. We're dealing, most of the conflict situations are with landowners who have a handful of goats or sheep or even fewer animals. And in those cases, there really is a very simple solution. It takes a bit of effort, but it's simply lock them up. And, by locking your animals up at night, you're reducing the risk significantly. Depending on where you live, if you're living next to a creek or something like that, if your animals are let out, during the day, then, early mornings and late afternoons can still be an issue. And there are ways to get around that. And when I say lock them up, I mean in a fully predator-proof enclosure. What I find, with the polarization of this discussion, often it sort of ends up with this pro-predator and anti-predator sort of sentiment, and it simply doesn't get one anywhere, and one way that the conversation could become more palatable, I think, is by just talking simply about animal welfare and ignoring the predator conservation aspect of it, and saying, like, listen, if you've got 2 goats and you have them in an inadequate pen where a predator can get in, basically you're trapping these animals into a traumatic situation. And for the welfare of your animals, it's up to you. You're the one who's responsible to look after them. You need to ensure that those animals are properly protected. So it almost bears, I'd love the Humane Society and animal welfare folk to get more involved in this discussion, because I find, it's obviously a traumatic thing to be involved in these cases. And there's certainly relatively easy ways of dealing with them with very little expense. Most people have the infrastructure or wire or whatever it is on their property to make something that's adequate. For commercial farmers, it becomes a little bit more complex. And again, we have very little, relatively few issues with mountain lions and commercial farmers in Sonoma. But livestock guardian dogs for bigger number of livestock are a good way to go. And we're, testing through our research. We're testing different ways at the moment to try different methods. But the general feeling is that essentially, for the smaller numbers, locking them up is really the answer. At least then for that particular period of time, you go to sleep, the animals are safe. And there's some landowners that have been really innovative, making their pen systems automated, which with today's technology is really cheap and easy.
Nice.
And you can just simply use a bit of Pavlovian education, and goats aren't, or sheep are not exactly rocket scientists. So you can come and get them in at a certain time automatically, in that if you so wish.
How smart are the cats? Would the cats attempt to get into these enclosures, or are they just going to give up if they hit a fence in their face?
Well, the cats, I hate to say it, I used to think cats were stupid when I was doing my doctorate. And then I thought, gee, I can't, when I was studying leopards, and I was thinking, I don't want to think that they're stupid. So I sort of moved over to them just being arrogant. And essentially, they're really visual. The visual stimulus part of this equation is a big one. So when you've got a wire enclosure or an enclosure, if it's a wire enclosure, what you want to do is to have some kind of material, a non-see-through material, like thick, dark shade cloth or something like that for the lower 5 feet. If the cat can't see in, they lose interest a lot quicker. It's when they can see in, the connection between their eyes, brains, and their sort of need, that cat response is just too strong, and they get up to a lot of mischief outside the pen, and often animals die just sort of through the trauma of having a mountain lion around. So even if your animals are completely protected, but they're visually, in sight of the mountain lion, they can still cause trouble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds just like humans in a candy shop. You're tormented by what you can see on that. We haven't talked too much about the research that you do that has been quite innovative itself to help out understanding how large our population is. Where do they go? There's a fascinating map on your website showing the pattern, which, of course, you wouldn't have known without your ability to begin collaring the lions. How many lions have you collared in the last, what is it now, 6-7 years that you've been doing this?
Yeah, well, despite the incredible setbacks we've had, as you know, with the fires in 2017 that destroyed all our equipment and put us back 6 months, and the next fires, and then COVID, we've still managed to collar 22 cats, I individually identify and biologically sample 31. So, the value of collaring these animals with GPS tracking devices is just incredible. I mean, it's anybody sitting on a piece of property going like, well, I've got like 5 mountain lions on my property and blah, 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 and this is what's going on. Well, it's impossible to know what's going on without being able to track these animals, because they're incredibly elusive, and you really are thumb sucking until you start visualizing what it is these animals are doing. And we're, acting like Big Brother, getting to see all of this. And we've had some wonderful and fascinating results, looking at ranges of these cats, up to 250 square miles, and looking at infanticide cases where a male will go in and kill another female's kittens and then go back and mate with that same female 8 days later. And then, the result of that is his offspring, and being able to then monitor the success, survival, and rates of these animals. It's, one of our females that we've tracked, P1, who's kind of the super mama, she's like almost 15 years old. She hasn't had a single offspring, one of her offspring survived to breeding age that we've been able to track. And that's through, natural causes, but also through depredation permits and conflict situations where these cats don't have a chance. So when you see a whole, when people say, but you're protecting these animals and they have all these babies, where did the babies go? Well, most of them die, so it's we're able to monitor that, which has really been valuable, and expanding the study, where we have cats collared in the West County of Sonoma, we've got cats collared in Napa, and going right up into, covering the whole of Sonoma, really. And, we also work in Lake County and Mendocino.
Well, we're just about out of time. What would you, Dr. Martins, what would you like our listeners to know, and how to reach you if they have a suspected mountain lion problem and they would like to have you come onto their property to begin the tracking process?
Well, we open ourselves up to the public, for them to contact us anytime. And, our details can be shared. If anybody has any issues or needs advice on how to keep their animals safe, we really, to avoid the conflict, is the first step is to ensure that your animals are safe and you're doing the right thing. And then coexistence is just that much easier. So for them to pick up the phone, call us, we're available, and not every case is exactly the same. So sometimes just tweaking certain things can be useful.
Yeah. Right. And the number is 707-721-6560. And the website, really easy one to remember, truewild.org is a fast way to connect. Dr. Quinton Martins with Living with Lions and True Wild, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.